Good
Good morning,
morning,
Rick.
everyone. Can I start off by asking you a question, the two
Yes.
of you?
Of course.
Is there any way of not talking about anti-Semitism for the next year? Like, could we put a moratorium on just not using that word anymore till next July 4th?
I know.
Because I can't. I mean, I've been in this business 45 years, and you've always had this issue of anti-Semitism coming up every so often, but now it's obsessive. I mean, everybody you talk to, I mean, that's all they want to talk about is just anti-Semitism, anti-Semitism, anti-Semitism. And
But is that because Jews are feeling more vulnerable, or do you think it's a manufactured?
I don't know. I mean, I think it's a little bit of both. I think there is certainly a rise in anti-Semitism, and I think that besides even the rise, I think the anti-Semites have this license now that it's not it's okay. There's not going to be no ramifications, about it. And then there's of course the social media aspect of it, where the sewer, is overflowing with garbage, and that flows into the into the mainstream. But it's like just like it's like nonstop. Everybody, everybody you just talk to, I call for solicitation, for funds. Do you have a guard, Rabbi? Do you have an armed guard? Where does the armed guard standing? I mean, it's like, yes, we have a
People are
guard. We
nervous.
have an armed guard. He stands in front. He falls asleep. He goes out for coffee. I mean, what are these are. But
Jews are nervous.
they're
Jews
nervous.
are very nervous.
They're nervous.
It's, I think it's also a lot of it, I think, is that people who have never thought about Jews or Israel in their lives before, now all of a sudden they're thinking about, the role of Israel in the world in particular, and they don't know anything. So they're asking questions. I think some of it, I think a lot of it is people who have never thought about this issue or thought about the situation in the Middle East before in their lives. Now all of a sudden they're starting to think about it, and they don't know anything.
Totally.
And so either sometimes they're asking good faith questions and maybe don't know how to ask the questions, and sometimes they're asking questions that are sort of makes you raise an eyebrow. But
Right.
why are they asking the questions? But those can still be good faith questions. They just don't necessarily know that, what they're asking is our questions have been asked for generations about Jews, but they're just coming across it for the first time.
This. Yeah.
Right.
I think the thing I've noticed the most is the privilege of getting a Jewish education is that I don't think anybody in the Orthodox world, and I don't want to make a blanket statement. I'm sure there are many non-Orthodox Jews who feel this way too, but in the Orthodox world, there's no question about whose fault anti-Semitism is, right? And it's not an inward-looking issue. Like, it's people hate Jews and we accept it and we move on and we have to do what we have to do. And yes, there is this idea that when there's a surge of anti-Semitism, we should do better more mitzvahs, we should learn more Torah, all of this kind of stuff. But we don't believe, I don't think, at least this is not the way I was educated, that there's anything I can do to stop anti-Semites. But I feel like a lot of Jews right now are living in this space where they're like, what can we do to be better so that people don't hate us? And that's a question that I'm not willing to ask. I don't care. There's nothing the Jews can do differently that's going to make people who hate us all of a sudden like us.
Right.
And I'm not interested in even exploring that. I'm interested in being Jewish, living my life. And if there are people who hate us, I feel bad for them. It's really their loss.
And they also don't know how to answer the questions.
Right.
Right.
Well, that's another,
Right. So when people ask about, probably the most common thing that I think people who are dealing with the Israel question for the first time, aside from the whole Gaza genocide nonsense, but the issue that they're sort of most concerned about is the West Bank situation.
Yeah.
Right. Is the Judea-Samaria thing. And so they have no idea how it got this way. They have no idea what the situation was before the 67 war, after the 67 war. They don't know what the 67 war was, right? I mean, so like people are asking these questions and they're like, I don't know, maybe they're right because I don't know anything about the situation, anything. So I think part of this, I do think also, Hailea, to your point, is, either having a Jewish education or at least, being able to educate yourself about the situation so you can start to answer some of these questions.
Okay, thank you.
But
thank you.
So
That
want to talk about
was enlightening, and let's move on.
On a happier topic, though, one thing we didn't mention last week was the Mazel Tov to Chayleah for having for about to have her first daughter.
No, she's not carrying.
Yes, her non-carrying daughter.
That's not what's happening. But
No,
Shmuley, her oldest son, became engaged. So Mazel Tov.
Thank you.
Yes.
Very exciting. Mazel Tov also to my parents. Who
Right. This is our first grandchild to do this. So it's a very exciting time in our family.
Yes,
it is.
And it was a wonderful engagement party. I was lucky enough to be able to go, and they had waffle bar, which made it worth it. It made it worth my staying in my crappy Airbnb for the waffle bar. So that was good.
And an open bar, a waffle bar, and an open bar.
Yes.
Those people who know which one was for who and who got what.
That's right.
That's
right. That's right. Exactly.
No, it's very exciting, and it's definitely. I feel very adult in a way. Like my child is getting married. It's a different stage. I still feel like a kid, so this is like a funny moment for me. And it's also weird for me because I'm kind of similar age to my parents when I got married. Like I think you were even younger than me when I got married. But
it's possible, yeah.
I remember thinking you two, like you and mommy, like had your shit together. I feel like you were real adults, and I feel like I'm playing house or something. It's just a weird feeling, but it's very exciting.
It's happening.
I know.
It's happening, and before you know it, you're going to have a daughter-in-law.
Yes.
In your house.
She's already very nice. She texts me.
She does?
Yeah. Sends me pictures of Shmuley because he won't send me pictures. So she keeps me updated.
It's going to be such a different experience having a girl than having boys.
I know.
Yep.
Really
That's
cute.
For sure.
It's really cute.
That's great.
Yes, thank God. So this week we are going to talk about the weekly portion. It's a double portion, which maybe you'll explain quickly, actually, because we read 2 parshas together. And these are the last in the book of Numbers, right?
Yes.
Okay, just checking.
Yes. It's good she did her homework.
I did my homework. I actually did not do my homework, but we're going to rely on my memory here. So Matos and Masei, these are the 2 parshios. Are they always read together, or are they sometimes separate?
No, only sometimes.
Oh, really?
Read together. Yes.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Can you explain why?
Yes.
Okay.
There's a number of parshas in the Torah, and the Torah has to be finished by Simchas Torah.
Right.
Now, in the Jewish calendar, as we know, there happens to be sometimes leap years.
Mm-hmm.
So you throw in 4 extra weekends, 4 extra Shabbases. All of those Shabbases need to have a portion.
Right.
So you have to be able to portion them out. We're always going to start the Torah right after Sukkot, no matter what.
Right.
So there are years when there are 52 weeks in the year, and then there are weeks that are 56 weeks in the year.
Right.
So you have to figure out. So sometimes these portions are together. If there comes a leap year, usually they're separated to give us more flexibility, in finishing the Torah. So that's right. If there was exactly same number of weeks every year and the number of Torah portions every year, maybe it would work out perfectly, but there isn't. So that's why sometimes, most of the time, they're together. Most of the time, Matot-Masei are together. But there are going to be some years where they're separated, just like Chukas Bolak and others.
It was interesting for a few weeks this year.
Right.
Israel and the diaspora were reading 2 different portions on Shabbat.
Correct.
Because the holiday of Shavuos is one day in Israel, and it was a Friday. So the next day they read the regular Torah portion. But here outside of Israel, it's a 2-day holiday, so we didn't read the regular portion. So we were 1 parsha behind everybody in Israel. But we caught up because we read a double portion.
Correct.
Right? Okay.
Correct.
So now we're the same as Israel.
Correct.
I want to ask you a question about the parshas just generally. When did the parshas, like that division of the Bible, come into being, and who did it and who named him and all of that?
So the names came much later. The names came in like in the Middle Ages, just basically they were taken from, most of them were taken from the first words of the section.
Right.
So Matos and then the Masei, not always the first word, but generally the theme of the portion, were given. I mean, the verses, if you look in the Torah, there are no verses and there are no. So there was the narrates. There were those that knew how to write each verse and know where one verse starts and one verse ends. Plus, they also knew that how to pronounce the word. Because if you take a look in the Hebrew without any vowels, you could read the word up completely differently. It could be, it could be Yehoshua, or it could be Hoshea. It's for his name. So though that had to be done. So during the Talmudic times, we already had portions and sections, of the Torah. I don't think they had their names yet, but there was the 5 books of Moses. We know that they were split into five books. We know that they were split up in different sections. As we know, if you looked in the Torah, you see that there's some sections that we call open, that there's more space between the sections, and some are closed. There's less space between the sections, and that's what we call a Masorah. That's called a tradition that has come down. Later on, like in the during Talmudic times already, we knew already that what has to be read in shul. We had 7 people coming to be reading the Torah and over, but later on the names were given, to. So I'm assuming that's during the prophetic times the Torah was split then, and the names were given much later. But I don't know if we can pinpoint exactly when the names were given and the chapters, because the chapters, that's really a different story. Right. That I don't think was already a Jewish. It may actually have been, right, some Christian that had split the sections into, like, Genesis is 50 chapters, and then right, and Numbers is 40 chapters. That was done already in a non-Jewish source. We've accepted it, and that's the way the Torah is being sectioned out. But that's kind of how it worked.
I just took a class with someone who's an expert on trup, which is the tune that we read the Torah in. If you go to synagogue and there's a certain tune, and we don't know where that comes from. There's no historical. It's old. It's very, very ancient, but we don't know who started it, where it comes from. There's no evidence. But what's interesting is this teacher basically showed us how the tune goes along with the narrative. And so there's certain words, like one of the biggest, I don't know anything about this, but there's something called a shalsheles, which is like a 3-note on one word. So it's a very long note. You read it with like 3 turns. And if you look at where the Torah has a shalsheles, it really helps the story. And he gave an example that one of them is during the story with Joseph and Potiphar's wife. Potiphar's wife was trying to seduce Joseph. She was trying to get him to have relations with her. And there's a shalsheles there. And he explains, if you read it again and you understand the tune, you see that Joseph took a minute to think through what was going on, right? And so it's giving the reader and the listener a minute to pause and put yourself in Joseph's position and think all of the different moral ramifications of what could have happened in that moment, and how Joseph maybe came to the decision to, whatever he did. So it's just, he showed how through the whole Torah, when you understand the tune, it helps the narrative.
Totally.
It's very, very interesting.
And each word has a different note to it.
Yeah.
So like, the ending of the verse has a saif pasuk where it ends.
Right.
And then you begin the next verse, and then it stops and you begin the next verse. And it's very interesting. It's very, very ancient. I mean, it comes back because we have the same trup in Tehillim. Right. David wrote different notes, but the same kind of trup was in Tehillim. So the trup that's in the Torah goes at least way back from David's times, and even probably even prior to David,
Well, we forget that everything was memorized, right?
Yeah. The Torah was written.
Oral. The Torah
the Torah was written. Yeah, this was memorized.
But everything was memorized.
Yes.
Everything came down orally. So
yes, and they used to go through the Torah once a year. Oh,
every time.
Don't worry, I do that myself because I want to sound important.
He calls himself during the podcast.
I call myself just to sound important,
Yeah. Anyway, okay. So this week's parsha, it's interesting that we're doing this week's parsha because if you ask most people, they'll tell you it's probably one of the most boring. I hate to say it like this.
Boring? Why? It's got so much. It's got so much going on.
You're in trouble. Yeah, you're in the doghouse now.
No, there's so much going on here.
I don't know. It's like names. It's a lot of names and places.
No, there's no names and places. There's some names and places, but there's a war going on, and there's a lot going on. Moses gets angry, forgets some of the rules and regulations. Elazar has to step in. I mean, there's a lot happening here. The laws of kashrus is in here.
Oh, okay.
In Matot.
I'm going to let Jay ask a question.
Yeah.
So there was one thing in particular in the parsha this week I thought was really interesting that happens in the story, where the parsha starts with Moses telling all the tribe heads, if you say you're going to do something to Hashem, you better do it, or there's going to be a problem. Right.
Keep your word.
Yeah. And then a couple of chapters later, we get to the story of Gad and Reuben, where, for those of you who don't know, and if I get this wrong, correct me, they're on the east bank of the Jordan River. They're going to be crossing over to the west bank, which is the lands that we know of now as Judea and Samaria and Israel. But Gad and Reuben say, we're like sheep herders and cattle herders, and they have really good sheep and cattle on this side of the Jordan. So if it's all the same to you, we just assume stay here. Right. And Moses basically says, no, like that is not going to happen. And he really admonishes them. And so they say, oh, no, we're sorry. We didn't mean that. We not only will we go, we'll be the vanguard. Like we will lead you in. And then Moses I'm going to read this section here because I think it's interesting, considering what he had just told the tribe leaders. In Numbers chapter 30, verse 20 to 24, it says, Moses said to them, if you do this, so this is after they've already said, we renege, we're going to go help you out. Mm-hmm. Moses says to them, if you do this, if you go to battle as shock troops at the instance of Hashem, and every shock fighter among you crosses the Jordan at the instance of Hashem, until God has personally dispossessed the enemies, and the land has been subdued, at the instance of Hashem, and then you return, you shall be clear before him and before Israel, and this land shall be your holding under Hashem. But if you do not do so, you will have sinned before him, and know that your sin will overtake you. Build towns for your children and sheepfolds for your flocks, but do what you have promised. And so it's really interesting that he had just before this told the tribe heads, you better live up to your word. Like if you say you're going to do something, you better do it. And then Gad and Reuben say, okay, we're going to do this. And then Moses kind of gets into like lawyerly mode and says, if you do this, right? If you do this, if you live up to your word. And then he says, every shock fighter among you crosses the Jordan. He's very specific. It's not most of them. It's not, a portion of them. It's all of them go. And I just think it's really interesting how in the story they go from this theory of living up to your word to very soon afterwards Moses saying, okay, remember what I just told you? Now it's time for you to live up to your word.
So from here you learn that a true vow only can take place if you have both the positive and the negative, because he adjures them both positively. It means you are going to go, and then that he doesn't stop there, but then he gives them the reverse. If you don't go, this is going to happen to you. These are the ramifications. So a real vow is only done if you have both the negative and the positive.
Oh, interesting.
So because he wanted to make sure that, okay, you will go, but if you don't go, nothing is going to happen. No. If you go, you'll get the land. But if you don't go, we'll remember that, all of that stuff.
So
now,
it's interesting. Wait, just to clarify something. So all the other tribes were crossing the Jordan River.
Right.
They were going to have to fight wars in order to settle the land, because there were people living in what was called Canaan at the time.
Yes.
And so these two tribes weren't going to get out of the war. They were going to have to settle their families and then join the other 10 tribes in fighting the war. Is that, am I getting
Correct.
it correct?
Okay. 9.5 tribes.
9.5
There was
tribes.
actually half a tribe of Manasseh
Yeah, stayed
that
also.
stayed with them. Now
So is that considered biblical Israel?
Yes.
Like over the
Yes,
Jordan
because
River?
it was kibush Rabin, because it was
Right.
captured by us. So it is considered part of it. But it's interesting. I mean, because the story in and of itself is interesting. I mean, you know, like they come to Moses and they ask him, and then Moses' reaction. I mean, which is, of course, not shocking, because they just had spent 40 years in the desert because they didn't want to go into the land.
Right.
And now you come back and you say you don't want to go into the land after we're here.
Yeah.
We're here now, and it's but if you read the text carefully, and this is, I think, one of the greatness of the Bible is that if you read the text carefully, you find out much more behind the scenes than you do even when with the words in the text. I mean, the message behind it. I'll give you an example why Moses was so adamantly against it, besides the fact that you're going to let everybody else fight and you're going to sit here. That, of course, that's self-understood. But there was also something else that was behind their request. So Jay quoted from, I'm just going to go back just a little bit before Moses does that, because they come to him and they make this request. We don't want to go. He screams at them. He says, well, you're nuts or something. I mean, like they said, everybody's going to fight and you're going to sit here. And this is not going to happen. You're coming with us. Okay, that's number one. Then they say to themselves, well, we didn't present our case well enough.
Right.
I mean, we thought that, you know, we didn't present it, so let's restate it. So this is from chapter 32, verse number 16. Now, I want you to listen carefully to what they say. They approached him and said, pens for the flock we will build for our livestock, and cities for our small children. We will arm ourselves swiftly in the vanguard of the children of Israel until we have brought them to their place, and our small children will dwell in the fortified cities for inhabitants of the land, etc., etc., etc. Okay. Then it's what Jay says. Moses answers them, if you go ahead and you fight and you do everything and you make room for your brothers to come and settle there, that's great. Now, then you'll be okay. Now what he tells them to do is go, and now this is verse number 24. Build for yourselves cities for your small children and pens for your flock. Now, I want you to carefully read again. I'm going to go back to verse number 16. They approached him and they said, listen to this, okay, carefully. Pens for the flock shall we build for our livestock, and cities for our children. So they put their emphasis where?
They reverse the order.
Emphasis are pens for our flock, and then cities for our children.
Ooh.
Moses, in verse number 24, says to them, build for yourselves cities for your small children and pens for your flock. Because one of the things that was driving them was economics. Economics always plays a part in everything in the world. I mean, you can't get away from the economics, because it's economical and practical that they stay, you know, on the other side of the Jordan River, right? But because they were so enamored by the wealth that they had achieved in the desert. You know, Miknerav, the first verse of the section is Miknerav. They had a tremendous amount of livestock, an abundance of livestock, and they were so impressed with their wealth that their emphasis was, what are we going to do? We are going to preserve our wealth. And how are we going to preserve our wealth? Not by going into the land of Israel, which was promised to our forefathers, the Holy Land, everything's flowing with milk and honey. No, this is a fertile area. This is what we need for our flocks. This is where we're going to prosper financially, economically, money-wise, and therefore we want to stay here. Had nothing to do with spirituality, had nothing to do with building a yeshiva, and it even had nothing to do with building cities for their families. All they thought about first and foremost was their economic well-being. Comes along Moses and said to them, okay, you know what? You guys are a bunch of schmoes, okay? 40 years we're dragging ourselves in the desert to go into a land that is holy. You want to stay here? Okay, you know what? And the funny thing is, if it's interesting, because every other time, a couple of other times, where Moses was confronted with an issue where he wasn't sure about, what did he do? He consulted with God. Here he doesn't consult. He takes it on his shoulders completely, and he says to them, okay, this is what you're going to do. But I'm asking you to reconsider where your values lie. Because if your values are building pens for your livestock, and then secondary will worry about our children's well-being, you're not going to be here for very long.
Wow.
You're going to assimilate and goodbye. You'll be finished. But if you put your priorities straight, that means that your families and your children and worrying about your children, how you raise them spiritually, and all of that stuff, and give them a grounding, then you build the pens for your flock. Then you're going to be able to sustain yourself over here. So it's interesting in the Torah. He doesn't say to them that openly.
Right.
He doesn't directly challenge them that. But if you look at the verses and see
it.
how they presented it and how Moses responded, you can tell a great deal about where they were, where their heads were. And and they were once actually later on, when the exile does come, one of the first tribes. I don't think they were the first. I think Zvulun and were in the northern part of Israel were actually the first to be exiled, but they were from the very first, on the other side of the Jordan River, to be exiled and lost. Gad and Reuben and half this tribe of Manasseh are, history.
It's something I've been thinking a lot about since October 7th, is this idea, and I think I might have even mentioned on the podcast before, but the fact that Reuben and Gad and half of Manasseh felt a responsibility and had an obligation to fight the wars with their brothers in Israel. It makes me think about our current situation and what our obligation as Jews in the diaspora, what's our obligation when Israel's at war? Like, I don't know. It's something I think about, because we can't just sit back and
call yourself a Raven Zealous.
Yeah.
So all Jews are responsible for one for the other.
Right.
There's nothing to talk about. I mean,
think about that.
Forget about it. Forget about it in Israel. If Israel was in right now in Morocco, and there were 3 million or 4 million Jews in Morocco under this dire threat, wouldn't we do something about it? Of course, we do something about it. Right. So how much more so? But we've gotten used to it. American Jews have gotten used to it. Israel can defend itself. What do we need to defend Israel? Right. Their success is their downfall. Yeah. Israel's success is their downfall. When Israel was the timid one, and Israel was the weak one and had no money, then everybody ran. Now Israel's the neighborhood bully.
But it does bother people.
Makes us feel what?
But it does bother some people that we still care. Like, I get this question a lot from Americans.
Yeah, but no one cares. No one cares when in the 70s, Americans were sending money over to the IRA in Ireland. They were raising money in Boston, sending big money, not $45. Big money to the IRA in Ireland. No one seems to have cared. Who cares? Right. No one.
And people do care. I mean, even look at the World Cup. How many people do you know whose families are from Portugal, Mexico, or Brazil, or Mexico, or whatever, who, they might root for the U.S. also, but they're also rooting for those countries.
I see much more Mexican flags here than American flags.
Here, everywhere is Mexico.
Yeah.
So it's like we all have that instinct to root for our people that we don't have. I would argue that probably Jews have a unique connection to Israel than other nationalities have to their countries, but we can certainly debate that. But I mean, certainly people have connections with their heritage.
Yeah.
So the fact that Jews have an affinity for Israel, aside from everything else, is not so crazy that it's not just sort of a natural thing that people do in their lives.
And this is exactly the issue that was dealing with Manasseh and Reuben and Gad. I mean, we're going into the land right now where we are going to become from this nomadic people that are wandering in the desert to establishing a real nationality, a real nation, and you are taking yourself out of that experience. So imagine what your children are going to feel. I'm going to say, why are we on this? Because the Jordan is a natural border. I mean, if you think about it, it's a natural border between the west and the east banks. Right. Everybody's going over to the west bank and living there, and you want to stay over here. So not only is it going to affect, like our 9.5 tribes, because we won't have your manpower, but also your families are going to be affected by not being part of this national national
Project.
consensus
Yeah.
building
Yeah.
idea. So
Oh, go ahead, Jay.
I was gonna say I have to imagine for Moses on a personal level, having just dealt with the spy issue not that long before, which we didn't talk about, but Moses sends out spies on the other side of the Jordan to see what's there, what sort of armies they're facing, and is it 13 spies he sends out?
12.
He sends out 12 spies. 10 of the spies come back and say, "Oh, we can never defeat them. They have giants," and blah 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 blah. But Caleb and Joshua come back and say, "No, we can win." And so now he's dealing with like the split in the community of all these people are freaking out because of what 10 of the spies say. And so now I have to imagine he's sitting here. So he gets that under control. Or he or Hashem gets under control, and now you have this situation with Gad and Reuben saying this, and he's like, "Oh my God, I'm gonna have to deal with another revolt again? You gotta be kidding me!"
No, for sure. I mean, I can just imagine he wanted to maybe punch them.
Yeah.
I mean, Moses, come a little closer. What are you saying here? Here, come a little closer. Say that one more time. Say that one more time. You don't want to go. Just say those words. Come here.
Did Moses know at that point that he wasn't going into the land?
Yes, he knew that.
So all of this time that he's preparing the Jewish people to go in, he knows that he's not.
Yeah. He's hoping. He's hoping for a last-minute reprieve.
Right.
He's really hoping for a last-minute reprieve, but the reprieve doesn't come. Right. And not only that, just prior to this story, God tells him, "I want you to arm men and take revenge on Midian." Because Midian came in to also be part of this scheme to injure the Jewish people with Moab,
Right.
So he says, "I want you to take revenge on the people of Midian, and then you're going to pass on." So God, interestingly enough, puts those two in the same verse, meaning that the war is dependent upon his passing. Because right after the war, Moses is going to pass away. Moses doesn't even for a minute hesitate. He gets together the men, they fight the people of Midian, and they destroy them,
so
and do all that.
So sad.
No, it was very sad. It was very one of the great sadnesses in the Torah that he was not allowed to go into the land of Israel. But and Kabbalistically, they tried to explain it, he was too holy for the land.
Yeah.
I mean, had his holiness and the holiness of the land come together, God would never have been able to destroy it or never been able to exile the Jews.
Right.
So you want to give him the credit that he was so holy, he had to stay in the desert. But he himself wanted so badly to be able to go in and experience that.
Can you, before we move on in the parshas? Oh, go ahead. Do you have a question?
Yeah, I was going to ask one more question about Moses. Is he sick now? Does he know he's dying? He does. Okay, not
he
yet.
Doesn't die. It's interestingly enough, because we're going to read at the end of Deuteronomy that he is in perfect health when he dies. He doesn't.
Okay.
He's not deteriorating. He's 120 years old, and he feels great. He just goes up the Mount Har Nebo and disappears. I mean, that's just the end of the story of a great man, maybe the greatest man.
Yeah. So, could you comment for a second on the sort of place the Jewish people are in, because they've now been in the desert for 40 years. They've been taken care of in many ways, right? Like they had their food provided. There was the cloud of glory. There was a safety. There was Moses. And now,
of fresh water,
right? The water. So now they're being told, okay, you're going to go into this kind of scary place. You have to fight these wars. You have to find your own money, your own food, your own. Moses isn't going to be here. How are the Israelites really thinking about this?
Okay, so it's a very good question, because none of the people that came out of Egypt are still alive today.
Right.
The only two people that are still living are Caleb and Joshua and Moses.
Right.
But everybody else is already born in the desert.
So everyone has died.
That generation has pretty much passed away, like God said. From the ages of 20 to 60. The kids are still alive.
Right.
The kids are still alive, and anybody that's born. So you have a mixture. But the kids, like the teenagers and younger that did come out of Egypt, are pretty much raised in the desert right now. In the desert.
Yeah.
So all they know really is about Moses and about living the life in a very spiritual way. But the whole time that they were traveling in the desert, they understood that eventually this is going to come to an end.
Yeah.
They knew that 40 years from now they are going to go into the land of Israel. And that's why they use the word chalutzim. Like Jay interpreted that as stormtrooper, not as stormtroopers, but as as storm guys or something. It's really we interpret it as pioneers.
Yeah,
you're going to be the pioneers in the land of Israel. Chalutz. You're going to go in there. You're going to be the front. You're going to fight the wars.
That's a modern word. Israelis. That's one of the
use
words
this all the time.
Yeah.
You're going to be the ones, and you're going to establish a real country where you're going to rule yourselves, and you're going to be, you're going to be on your own. But just know that Hashem is always going to be with you, just like He is here with us today. And number two, what Moses does last week is really, again, your heart just goes out to him, because once everything is done already, he goes to God and he says, okay, look, you're not going to let me in. I get it. Whatever the circumstances are, I'm not happy about it, but fine, I accept your judgment. But you have to appoint a leader.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he was thinking that just like Aaron's leadership was passed on to his son, his leadership, he had two sons, his leadership was going to be passed on to his two sons. And God said, you're absolutely correct. I'm going to appoint a leader in your lifetime, so people won't say, hey, you know what, Moses died and who made you the chief bottle washer? But it's not going to be your two sons.
Right.
It's going to be Joshua. And Joshua was the one that was most loyal to him. So they appoint Joshua while Moses is still alive to give Joshua credence, to give him credibility. Right. So that, so let's say, for example, when on Shabbos Moses gave a speech, now they had two sermons on Shabbos.
Mm-hmm.
Joshua also was, and they had, and how did Moses speak? Moses had what they called an interpreter. So Moses spoke, and then the interpreter would shout out, like what Moses was saying, and they appointed an interpreter for Joshua. That put him in a level equal with Moses, although the old saying is Moses is like shone like the sun and Joshua shone like the moon.
Right.
But they both shone.
Right.
They both were light, but Moses was, of course, the sun, and Joshua was, he was the moon. So here's Moses, even at the end of his days, where already he knows he's not going, he's still worrying about the Jewish people and wanting them to have a leader so they don't go leaderless. And God says, look, you know what? He doesn't quote, but this is what King Solomon writes: those who tend the tree eat the fruit.
Mm.
That's the reality. And your sons didn't tend the tree. They lived off your name and they took it easy, and they were not leadership quality. But Joshua was. So this whole idea of transfer of leadership was also very important, at the time, and a good lesson for us.
Oh yeah.
For sure.
Someone should tell the boomers about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. I don't know who those are, but fine.
And then I don't know if there's anything you want to discuss before this, but I think the next interesting thing here, is the cities of refuge.
Mm.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's anything you want to discuss before we get to. There's a little bit between this, but
I think that the hard part is that in Masei, the second section of Masei, when they talk about all their trials, the travels, where they came and where they went, and then God in chapter number 34 sets up the boundaries. That's an interesting one and very difficult, to understand, exactly where those boundaries are and which cities are in the boundaries, which cities are not in the boundaries. But God gives them an exact map of where He wants them to capture and do that. But
it's interesting. I just read something actually not related to exactly this specific point, but somebody asked a question about some of the narrative in the Torah that seems kind of irrelevant. I hate to use the word irrelevant, but you could read even like when it goes through all the names and the cities and the travels, all the different places, the borders. It's not like a mitzvah and it's also not really advancing the story. And so I read this thing from Maimonides where he writes, you can't say that every single verse, every single word is
Absolutely.
relevant and is something to teach us and has a lesson. And if you don't think that it's a mitzvah that it's telling you, then you have to figure out what the story is trying to say to you right now and how it's relevant right now. So I don't know, I thought about that when you were.
No, totally. I mean, each verse. I mean, if you believe like us that it's divine,
Yeah.
that this is God's writing with Moses, Moses' help, then there's not a question.
Right.
And the question is that God put His wisdom into it, and even the names of the people, from the tribe of Dan, Nasi, Buki, Ben Yogli.
I mean,
you think to
that's a
yourself,
name.
why do I need to know the name of Buki Ben Yogli from the tribe of Dan? But you know that it makes it personal,
Right.
that there was a human being there that represented the tribe
Right.
of God, that, that went out there and did what he was wanting.
Right.
This is all part of the narrative. All this gives it texture,
Right.
and layers, to learn and to discuss and it's incredible.
It is.
It's incredible.
Can you see us, Jay, by the way?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, we can see
We
you.
can see you.
Something happened to your camera. Okay, just
all right. Yeah.
So, City of Refuge.
Cities of Refuge. Yeah, it's great.
Tell us about that.
Are you asking me or Jay or what?
No, you.
You. Oh, Cities of Refuge.
Nothing personal, Jay.
Okay.
Yeah, you want people to actually know what it is correctly.
Okay. So the Cities of Refuge. So God says like this: you're going to come now, you're going to establish countries and cities, and and then there's going to be people are intermingling with each other, and ultimately, maybe even inevitably, there's going to be a time when someone is going to hurt somebody, unintentionally. Now we know if someone hurts somebody intentionally, the punishment is, if you hurt someone and you cause damage, you have to pay. We know that. We know that if, God forbid, you kill someone intentionally and there's witnesses, you have to. We know about the capital punishment.
Right.
A life for a life. But what happens when someone kills someone unintentionally? Like what's the classic case? The classic case is you're climbing up a ladder, you're carrying a bucket of paint, you slip, the bucket of paint falls down, it hits someone in the head, and the person is killed. Okay. You had no intention of killing him. You had nothing against this person.
Right.
There was no forethought before that. You did not lay in ambush. What happens to you now? Now, the family, of course, is extremely agitated because, you should have been careful. We lost a relative, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So what do you do now? What do you do now? So God created an atonement for I'm going to call him a killer, not a murderer, because he didn't intentionally murder that person, but he's a killer.
Right.
He took someone's life. So what do you do? So God established cities of refuge. There's 6 cities in Israel, 9 altogether, 3 on the east bank, 6 on the west bank of Israel. And these were called cities of refuge, that the killer had to immediately go to those cities.
Mm-hmm.
Why did he have to go to those cities? Because they were afraid that the Goyel Adam, the avenger of blood from one of the family members, would be so enraged against what happened that he would want to take, revenge, and he would kill him. So he's not allowed to. What happens is that this guy is escorted, if he needs to be escorted, to the city of refuge. And he stays in the city of refuge for a period of time, and then he's allowed to go back home. But that's his atonement.
So it's like a safe space.
It's a safe space. It's a safe space. So that the avenger of blood doesn't kill him. I mean, the family doesn't get together and take revenge for him.
Does he go with his family? Or
he could go with his family. Sure,
Okay.
he could go with his family. And the interesting part of it is he stays until the high priest in Jerusalem passes away.
Right.
When the high priest in Jerusalem passes away and they appoint a new high priest, that's the time when the people of the city of refuge can go back home, and the avenger of blood has no legal rights on them. But he's warned that if you leave the city of refuge before the appointed time, that means you think to yourself, well, 7 years have passed or 10 years have passed, because in the first temple, there were a total of 18 high priests in a period of 400 and some odd years.
Oh, wow.
So you figure, you could be a high priest for
40 years.
30 years.
Yeah.
Okay, and you have to sit in the city of refuge. So you think to yourself, now, like 10 years have passed, and the Goyel Hadam, or the avenger, maybe he himself had died, and I'm going back. If you step out of the boundaries, you're a walking dead man. Because if someone comes and kills you, we're not going to do anything to them.
Right.
You are a walking dead man. You take the blood on your head yourself.
Wow.
Okay, that's the thing. So
Wow.
So why did they need to set up a city of refuge versus just making a commandment that, if you accidentally kill somebody?
Because you have to suffer. You have to pay a price. If they said you go back home and no one is allowed to touch you, then you wouldn't suffer. Then you go on with your life. But you caused someone to die. Yes, it was unintentional, and yes, you had no malice forethought, but ultimately through your hand, someone did die, and it's not unavoidable. See, if something was unavoidable, he didn't have to go to the city of refuge. If this was a case of some extreme thing happened and it's just, but here, these things happened and you were in the woods, you were chopping wood, and a piece of your axe flew off and killed somebody, that's avoidable.
Right. You could have been more careful.
You could have been more careful. You should have checked your axe beforehand. So this is a shoygig. This is unintentional versus an einus, which is a complete impossible way for you to have been able to.
I remember learning this. Oh my gosh.
Right?
What's amazing?
Mazed is intentional. This is in Gemara Makis.
And
shogeg is unintentional. Onus is complete accident, where there's no way you could have avoided it. Right. Then you don't have to go. But if you're a shogeg, like in the case I talked about, where you're going up the ladder and you're carrying up, be careful.
Right. Be careful.
Be careful. Now, if you want to take it one step even further, this is already going into interpretations and trying to understand why this would happen. So we say is because God has his own accounting. Right. And what most probably happened, although it's not necessary to happen this way, but it could have happened, that the person that does the killing should have already gone to a city of refuge where he killed somebody unintentionally and he didn't go. And the person that was killed should have been killed because he was himself a murderer but was never really taken to court and was never prosecuted. So what happens is that the person that was supposed to end up in exile is walking up the ladder, and the person that was the murderer is walking underneath the ladder, and he gets killed, so that takes care of the murderer, and the one who was supposed to go to exile has to now go to exile. I mean, if that's how some rabbis interpret this idea, that that God has his accounting practices. Right. When you on the outside, you're looking and you're saying, wow, I mean, look at this, an innocent person was killed, and then this innocent person who really didn't mean to do anything, went there, but you may say that there's a story behind this story, that that there were circumstances that led up to this. There's a famous medrash. There's a famous medrash that Moses asks God, could you show me your accounting system? God doesn't exactly show it to him, but he shows him the scene where a young man is going and someone robs him and they're killed, and so he shows him that there's a cause and effect for every act, even though it looks disjointed from the outside. But if you look at the big picture from heaven, you see that everything is really connected one to the other. And so that's one way of looking at it. But again, this had to be done unintentionally. If there was some intent, meaning that, they already saw that there was already animosity between the two, and there was forethought between the two, then the city of refuge is not going to help you. Then it's intentional. Now, intentional, you had to have witnesses and you had to have a warning beforehand not to kill him. But if he went ahead and did it anyways, of course, there was capital punishment. But if he didn't, an intentional murder, even if he wasn't warned or there were no witnesses, would not go to the city of refuge. Right. He would have to play out. He would have to deal with it himself. How he survived. But this only helped someone that was done b'shoigig, unintentionally.
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny because it's at the end of the Second Temple era, there was so much murder going around that the city of refuges didn't mean anything. I mean, people were
Is that something that will come back when Mashiach comes, or we're not
Hopefully
gonna
there'll be no more murder. I shouldn't say murder, but I said there'll be no more
Death.
killing.
Yeah.
There'll be no more killing. But
Interesting.
you never know. There's a lot of different opinions about what's going to happen when Mashiach comes. Whether it's
that
going
was
to be
one of the things I was reading about the City of Refuge, and I don't know if you had ever heard this interpretation, Rabbi, was that after the war, there was concern that the Jews would be, bloodthirsty because they would have just fought this war, and they would have it would have developed a more violent society because of them fighting these wars for years. And City of Refuge was a way to prevent maybe some of those proclivities or some of that, some of that. So I guess that what's the right way to put it? Like a taste for blood. It's probably not the best way to say it, but sort of just
some of that aggression.
Yes, a way to sort of get them back to a normal state of being, having just fought these wars. I don't know if you'd ever heard.
I've never heard it, but it makes sense. It makes sense. It's kind of like when they talked about Moses is at the end of the day he's going to bless everybody, but he doesn't bless the tribe of Simon. He misses him somehow. He still has a little bit of a what do I call it? A grudge against Simon for what they did. With Bilam and the women of Moab, but when they come into the land of Israel, Simon doesn't get its own piece of land. When they split up the land, Simon either gets a piece that some of them were living with Judah. Judah says to the tribe, "Come live with us," or they're actually spread out throughout the entire land. And commentaries ask why didn't the tribe of Shimon get a piece of land? Why were they spread out? So something like you said, Jay, except exactly reverse. Because Simon had this incredible aggression within them. I mean, we see this from the story of Joseph, where Shimon and Levi want to do that. So we know with Shimon, they were just incredibly aggressive
Dinah,
people.
sister,
with Dinah, with their sister in Shechem. So they just, they had this proclivity towards violence. So they said, no, you can't have them all in one area, because that's like having ISIS all in. I don't want to compare them to to ISIS, but it's having them all. It's like a nuclear bomb building, and all it's going to take is like one spark, and that's it. One match, and they blow up, and who knows what happens when they blow up this whole tribe. So what they said is better off. Let's break them up into little pieces. We'll solve two. We're going to solve two issues with one act. What are we going to do? Number one, we're going to save ourselves this problem with them all living together, so they're not all going to band together in once. And secondly, they are going to actually be the teachers. They turn out to be the teachers and the instructors in Israel. So the Jews who are very passive and like peace, like when you need a little bit of passion and aggression, they're going to be there to fire you up. So they're like, like the people that are going to be the spark. So when you get too comfortable and say to ourselves, hey, you know what? I'm okay. You're okay. Let's just do. There comes the Simonites to say to yourself, oh, no. You're not going to be comfortable. I mean, as long as we're going to be around over here, we're going to be the spark. And if we need to fight a war against whoever, because they're going to be constantly fighting wars, over the years, Shimon is going to tell them, time to get up, brothers.
Wow.
So you have to have a few of those people in each community. You can't have too many of them together, but you have to have a few rabble rousers in the community. Otherwise, the community becomes stilted and petrifies. But as long as you have these agitators within your community, they keep the community cooking. So you have to have just that right balance, few agitators to mostly normal people. But if you don't have the agitators, and now if you look at every community, if you take a look around in every, we could only talk really from the Hasidic and Orthodox communities, you always have these people that are agitating in the community. They're making the community better or pushing the community.
It reminds me of my grandfather.
Yes.
He was an agitator.
Yes, he was an agitator. Moshe Rabashkin.
Yeah.
A friend of ours.
Yeah.
He is the perfect Simonite. He is an agitator. He's going to do things whether you like it or you don't like it. He's going to push it along, and you're going to say to him he's crazy. He'll never be able to accomplish it. But great things never get accomplished by normal people. Have you ever noticed that? Normal people never accomplish great things. They accomplish small things, but big things never get accomplished. Like SpaceX, if you thought a normal guy who like went to school, works 9 to 5, is a normal guy, has a family, one wife, 2 children, he's not putting together SpaceX. You need a nut. You need a nut. A nut.
It's true.
And that's so to what you said about the cities of refuge calming everybody down. This is kind of the flip side. You needed the tribe of Simon to warm everybody up a little bit.
Right. It'd be so interesting if people could. I mean, I guess Cohens and Levies kind of can track their lineage back to what tribe they came from. Can Cohens and Levies? They can kind of.
They track their tribe like the Levi.
The Levies, right? It'd be interesting if all Jews could do that and track what tribe they came from.
Well, we know.
It's very hard to know.
I'm saying we know
some
we're
families
only from
know.
two,
Some
no, but
families
we're only
have a
from
tradition.
Two, but we could only be from two
No, not
tribes.
so fast. Not so
No?
fast. We think that the majority of Jews that survived were from the tribe of Judah and Benjamin, because they were living together in the southern kingdom. But don't forget that over the years, the northern kingdom was exiled 150 years prior to the southern kingdom. They migrated. So who says that many of them didn't migrate to the southern kingdom? If you were now being exiled and you had a chance to go to Israel or to Bulgaria, okay, so many people will go to Bulgaria. Okay, fine, live with the Bulgarians, but some of them will go to Israel, right? Some would go to Israel.
True.
So you're going to find people in Israel that came from the tribe of Zvulun, some from Yisachar, some from here, some from there. So there was a mixture of all the tribes, I would say. But the majority, yes, the majority is the tribes got lost. But there were still a mixture of other tribes.
But even after the destruction of the first temple, when the first dispersion happened, not all, I mean, my understanding is not all the Jews regathered. When
not all.
So you would have even had, I mean, I assume a decent number of Jews who stayed in various parts of the Babylonian Empire from that point too.
Totally.
Right?
I mean, because we talk about economics.
Yeah.
Economics is we're all Marxists at the bottom line. We're all really Marxists.
No,
we don't want to say it.
No.
But economic plays
I reject that.
Okay, I'm sorry. But economics plays the greater part, because when
we're gonna edit that out.
You think about it, when you went to Babylon, you established yourself. You're only there for 70 years or whatever it was. Let's say a few more years, 80 years, whatever it could be, and you started businesses. And then Ezra comes along and says, "Hey, you know what? Look, we're going back to the Holy Land, and God had promised us that we're going to build a second temple." And most of them said, "We're going to write a check. We'll make a fund, and down the line, way down the line, we'll come to visit once you guys are established and you have hotels." And that's and why did they say that? Because of one word: economics. Because they were comfortable in Babylon, even though they were under either the Babylonian rule and then later the Persian rule and then later the Greek rule, and everybody, they didn't care as long as their businesses were flourishing. The people in Israel are going to worry about that, do their own things. I mean, Jews had to take a loan to build a second temple. I mean, think about it. They had to get outside money to build a second temple. I mean, so that's the way it goes. And
so my point was, it would be interesting if people could track their lineage back to what tribe they started with, to see how that fits with their personality.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. That would be fantastic.
I'm definitely from Judah. I'm a
How
lion.
do you know? You're a lion. Oh, okay. You're a lion. You're lying.
I actually am a Leo, so it makes sense. I was born in July.
I'm pretty sure that's Chinese, isn't that right? Is that where I don't even know where the zodiac stuff comes from.
It has something to do with Judaism. Has a bit of
Judaism
a
has the 12, but it's not. It's not
exactly
the same as astronomy,
with,
but that's Greek. Right?
Yeah,
it's the Greeks.
No, okay, it's Greek. Okay.
But I think like Mazel, like we believe it's very similar. Like I was.
Well, there's
born
12
in the
constellations. There's 12 constellations.
So
it's
when
my mother writes about that, but it doesn't have to do with your temperament.
Oh.
I mean, I'm a Pisces. I hardly know how to swim. If I was a Pisces, I'd be. I mean, and if you told me that Mark Spitz, the guy who won like 9 gold medals in the Olympics, is a Pisces, makes perfect sense. You know, he's a fish. Michael Phelps is a fish. Abba Promoter looks like a whale. You know, like, okay, but I mean, if that's what you're referring to, okay, fine.
Wait, what are you, Jay? What's
I'm Taurus.
A Taurus? Okay.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
It makes
I have
perfect
no
sense.
idea what that even means.
That kind of it's like bullheaded.
A bull.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah.
Wow.
All right.
I'm
Okay.
glad I was able to throw in
Good.
that it's my birthday this month, actually. Just sliding it right in there.
That's so.
Here we
gifts,
go. A month
gifts,
of celebrations.
Gifts are accepted.
It's a month of celebrations. Here we go.
God.
Okay.
All right.
Anyway.
All right. This was
Thanks,
good.
everybody.
Oh, thank
Yeah.
you.
guys.
Thank you. It was great. It was great. Thank you so much, Jay. Have a wonderful day and a wonderful week. And
You too.
Till the next time. Take
All
care.
right. Bye.
Bye.